Hey everybody, what's going on? This is the newest episode of the Restaurant Growth Podcast by 7 Shifts. I'm your host, DJ, and today on the show we had Josh Kopel. Josh is a Michelin-rated restaurateur, president of the California Restaurant Association LA chapter. He's a tech founder, content creator, is the host of the Full Comp and Restaurant Marketing School podcast by Yelp, and now he's working to share his experiences over 20 years in the restaurant industry, both of those successes and failures, with the wider audience. We talked about what it takes to be a $10 million restaurant. And Josh laid the blueprint down for success, which includes analyzing demand, cultivating a culture, and the 3 keys to hitting those sought after profits and those huge margins that will help you grow. It's a tightly packed half an hour full of a ton of wisdom. I definitely learned a lot, and I think you'll all learn something too. So without further ado, here is that conversation. Josh, how are you today?
I'm good, man. How are you?
I'm well. We're so excited to have you on the show. The topic for today is going to be the blueprint for a $10 million restaurant. But before we kind of get into that, Josh, I'd just love to have you introduce yourself, tell the audience a little bit more about you.
My name is Josh Kopel. I'm a Michelin-rated restaurateur based out of Los Angeles. I've owned successful concepts in every tier of dining. I owned a bar in Hollywood for more than 10 years, then pivoted into fine dining, which was painful but educational. That eventually became a Michelin-rated restaurant. And then out of that, we spun a fast casual concept called South City Fried Chicken. So I have existed and thrived in every tier of dining.
Awesome. So you mean you know better than anybody, what not to do, what to do. And that kind of informs what you're doing now, both with your podcast, Full Comp, as well as Restaurant Marketing School, and all the other exciting projects that you're working on right now.
I'm looking to learn, to be completely honest with you. I mean, I don't think I'm a guru or an expert. I think that I am incredibly ordinary in the way that the problems that I faced, I think that most restaurateurs have faced. And I've tried to come up with solutions, more to benefit myself than anyone else. And then it's just about, sharing those solutions with the world.
Absolutely. So, I mean, kicking it off today, when you reached out to me, you kind of, really nice email talking about, what you've kind of figured out and how the model is changing and the way that you see things, I think is really unique. But, kind of going into that blueprint for a $10 million restaurant, you have the first kind of stage here, demand analysis, kind of saying, you don't get to $10 million without providing something that people want. So I guess, where do you kick off with that and that stage of starting your restaurant, rebranding, and just making sure that you're giving the people what they want?
Yeah, I would argue that for most of us, there's very little demand analysis done. For most of us, myself included, our restaurants are an extension of self. We create something we want to create in the communities in which we reside, without really thinking about product market fit. We don't think like marketers. And what that means is that, a lot of the times we create something that is redundant or something that is unique in a way that is uninspiring. The point of a demand analysis, the point of the exercise is to realize that you can't create demand. You can only meet demand wherever it lives. So if you want to open a bologna restaurant where you sell the best bologna in the world, it's not about marketing. Like either there is existing demand for bologna in that community, or you need to pack your shit and move to a place where people want what you're willing to offer. There's really no compromise to be made there. Everyone thinks it's about more, right? Like more marketing, more awareness, more name recognition. If I was in the press more, I'd be busier. If my food was better, I'd be busier. And I would argue, right? And I just don't see it that way. I see mediocre restaurants thrive every day because it just so happens that what they're offering, where they're offering it, meets an existing demand. So how do we get there, right? It's the easiest thing in the world to do. You just ask questions. So, and this isn't something you have to do before you open your restaurant. If you've been around 10 years, you can still reach out to every office manager in every building in your neighborhood. Reach out to the managers of apartment complexes. Stand outside of your own restaurant. Ask the passersby, what are you looking for that isn't in this neighborhood? Because even if that doesn't become the exclusive focus of your restaurant, then you can still adopt some of those practices to meet that demand. What we do is at least for me personally, like we built out our dinner service. And once it was at capacity, we then opened for lunch because we thought that's what you're supposed to do. But over the course of half a decade, we opened and closed for lunch 3 different times. Because what we failed to realize was there was no demand for the type of cuisine we offered at lunch, period, full stop. So we had maximized our profitability when it came to dine-in. So what did we need to do? We needed to focus on catering, large format, to go, prepackaged, delivery, all of these other things. And instead, what we did foolishly was we spent a ton of money multiple times trying to build a service that nobody wanted, and so stage 1 is demand analysis. And I think that that's critical.
Absolutely. And I think you laid out a lot of great ways to get there. In that case, if diners aren't coming, you're saying you guys should be open for lunch. They're probably not looking to you for that. And I think that's, it seems simple, but I think those natural kind of like, oh, well, we're really busy, so let's be open longer. Like, well, maybe that's not what people want. So that's really interesting. So once you're kind of there, you're talking to people, in the community, other restaurateurs, seeing what's successful. Once you kind of hone in on that, you have stage 2 here, which is creation of the culture engine. So if you could just go into a little bit more about that, that would be really great.
The way you get everybody talking about you is to talk to everybody. And you don't need to talk to every human on the planet. I'm a huge advocate for this like 1 to 100 ratio, where you make an effort to talk to one person that has access to 100 people. So again, those are going to be the concierges at hotels. These are going to be, local community leaders. You're going to want to talk to the managers of apartment complexes and office managers in the area. Invite them in, build those relationships. I think that you also have an amazing group of advocates in your employees. If you make it a great place for them to invite their friends, they'll do so. And we don't really have to do that through discounting, even though that's such a common practice. I think that if you focus on events, in small scale events, right? Tastings, menu previews, all of these different things that we can do that don't really cost anything. I think there's a massive opportunity to build that culture. One of the things that we did was everything we did externally, we did internally. So if we did a tasting on a new menu item for the neighborhood, we also did it for our team. If we did a tasting of a new spirit for the neighborhood, we would do it for the team as well. They were active participants in the whole process. The other thing I would say is believe the lie. I mean it sincerely. Like when I opened that bar in Hollywood, I told everyone it was the most popular bar in Hollywood, that we were going to reinvent what it meant to be a dive bar in Hollywood. And I filled it with loyalists and advocates. I sold the dream to my team, who sold it to the patrons, who sold it to everyone they knew. And if you believe it and you bake that into your culture, you'll be where you want to be before you know it, because you're not doing the heavy lifting yourself. I think that there are wasted opportunities because we are so busy. One of the biggest mistakes I made in my career was not pre-shifting every shift, every time. And it's not an opportunity to tell them what the special is that day. It's an opportunity to tell them why you're special, why the restaurant's special, and why they're special. It's about using it to leverage gratitude and significance, explaining to them why they're doing what they're doing. Because people today don't function in the way that I did when I was growing up. I'm not ancient, but I am in my 40s. And when I was coming up, like, you worked hard to work hard. You work hard because that's what you were supposed to do. But people today, they want meaning. They want to know why they're working hard. And so you have to show your work. You have to let them know what you're working on, why you're working on it, and why it will benefit them and the community that you're trying to serve. Additionally, it also saves you a lot of work when you tell people why you're doing what you're doing, because the why answers all of the hows and all of the what's. It's instead of saying them walking up to you and saying, hey, it's somebody's birthday, should I comp them dessert? If they understand the purpose of your place and they understand the culture that you're trying to create and the environment that you want to build for your guests, they'll have the answer to that question. They'll have the answer to all of those questions. My teams never asked me anything about anything. All they did was report back at the end of the shift, right? Yep. Here's what I did. I comped these 3 things. I pulled these 2 things off the bill. I gave this guy a free meal. These 5 people got free desserts. And I said, okay, because I trusted their judgment, because they were trying to do the one thing that I was trying to do, which was make sure that everyone leaves happy.
Yeah. And I think, by giving that to them and explaining that to them, you're empowering your staff to make the right decisions. And I think people would much rather work in a place where they feel empowered than where they feel like every one of their moves is being either watched or critiqued. Or they always have to ask, what am I doing? Am I doing the right thing? But giving them that empowerment, I think is a huge way to just not only be successful in your own business, but also to keep people around for the long haul, because they're going to want to be a part of it.
Management is hard. It's a constant investment because you're trying to control human behavior. Leadership is twice as expensive, but is an investment, not an expense, because it pays dividends over time.
Absolutely. So those 2 things, kind of both meeting the demand of the customers and the people that you're trying to serve, but also, making sure that your restaurant culture is on point. I feel like those 2 are kind of like the foundation of what makes a restaurant successful. You can't have it without those 2 things.
Those 2 things will provide external success. But then I think there are 3 keys to internal success, meaning that you're not only able to pay your rent, you're able to pay your mortgage too.
Yeah. Awesome. So those 3 keys, you've laid them out here as well. We'll put them in the show notes as well. But the first one being revenue model and maximization.
Right. So if you're listening to this and you're not making any money, you think, well, all I have to do is make more money and then I'll make more money. And there's definitely a school of thought, an old school of thought, that says that there are no bottom line issues. There are only top line issues. The reason you're not making any money is because you need to make an extra $1 million a year. And with an extra $1 million a year, then you'll really start to make money. But I would argue that when you look at a $10 million restaurant, that restaurant probably made money at $1 million in revenue, at $500,000 in revenue.
Yeah.
We're trying to fuel a broken machine most times. And that's really where the mistake is. And I think we need to look at our margins and say, what does winning look like? Because I would say that if you're a restaurant that's netting out 5 or 6% or less, it's really hard to improve things. There's also not a whole lot of money left for you at the end of the day. So we need to adjust that revenue model to make sure that you're maximizing profits and that it's not about at scale, right? Like, most restaurants don't make money with a singular location. You have to own 3 or 4. I disagree. I respectfully disagree. And I can point to dozens of restaurateurs with single locations that are millionaires and run multi-million-dollar concepts. And it's because the revenue model is exactly where it's going to be. The second facet to your revenue model is your capacity to create income. Everyone's leaving money on the table. If you're listening and you're like, that's not me, that's totally you. It's all of us. You could make more money on a Friday or a Saturday night or a Sunday night, but we don't really spend our time doing that, right? We spend our time trying to figure out how to make an extra $5,000 on a Monday, when there's probably 10 to 15 grand a month just sitting in weekend business that we're not trying to drive. So I think that we also need to look at maximizing our current capacity to meet our existing demand. And then I think the third step in that is diversifying revenue, right? That was the big lesson that came out of the pandemic. How many ways are you making money? I mean, it's crazy to think, and granted, I'm based out of Los Angeles and this isn't true everywhere, but like when it would rain, it would screw me. Like I would make a third of what I was going to make on a Saturday night because it rained. And like How do you support yourself and your family and your team when like a drizzle can ruin your profitability? I don't see it as a sustainable foundational way to make money. And so I would argue that if you have 2 to 3 different revenue sources, good for you. That's probably the standard, right? Some people are doing a little bit of catering, a little bit of dine-in, a little bit of takeout, but level that up. Have a 6 to 12 month plan to add 3 to 4 additional revenue streams. Double down on things that you see working for other people and improve upon those models. And I think that ultimately is the first key, is fixing your revenue model and getting the most out of what you currently have.
Yeah. I mean, other than, going into that just a little bit more, where is like one of the most common, places where you think restaurateurs are leaving money on the table? What do you see like time and time again? Like, well, this is a very just common mistake.
Gift cards. I mean, it's everyone should have a central focus on selling gift cards. It should not be optional. Like you should dedicate as much time to selling. Gift cards are the greatest money on the planet because they're never redeemed the same day, right? So it's like an investment. It's like a bond. And our team should be actively trying to sell them. It should be front and center on our websites. We should talk about it all the time on social. Like there are massive opportunities there to create like an ancillary revenue stream that doesn't require the need to create merch or bottle sauces. We always overthink the obvious, and the obvious is sell gift cards every day.
Yeah, and make it compelling, give it a compelling reason why someone should gift somebody, a gift card to a restaurant. Some of the best gifts I've received have been gift cards to restaurants because that's a memorable experience that you give somebody. Especially now, I think it's a good year to do it too, because I think shipping and shortages of seemingly everything right now, it's going to be hard to get holiday gifts this year. So capitalize on that, and I think selling gift cards is an excellent way to do so. And then moving into that, I think we have key 2 here, which is building awareness. How is that different than kind of that initial culture engine where you talk about talk to, one person that can talk to 100 people? Is that kind of a continuation of that?
It's not. It's now we need to get into systems, right? Because there's a methodical way, there's a systematic way to get attention. And when you look at the people that are growing $10 million restaurants, what are they best in the world at? They're best in the world at getting attention. You've got to put a lot of butts in a few seats in order to make $10 million, And so how do they do it? And I would argue that the foundational thing to get here is that you're looking at digital media all wrong. Maybe not you, but some of the people listening. What does social media exist for, right? Those restaurateurs use it as a sales tool. And that's not what social media was designed for. Social media was not designed to help you sell. It was designed to help you get attention. That is what it exists for. And so when you hear that, it kind of reframes the lens through which you look at social media, because now it's not about showing a piece of pie and saying, hey, come in on Saturday to get this piece of pie. Now it's about something very different. Now it's about saying, here's who I am. This is why I built this restaurant. These are the people I work with. These are the customers I love. Let me show you how we make this cocktail. Let me show you what goes into one of the most popular dishes on the menu. It becomes less high risk, less salesy, and more conversational. Because the goal of social media isn't to get them into the restaurant, it's to get them onto your website. That is the second part of that equation. Like once you've gotten their attention, what are you going to do with them? Well, you should be sending them to your Yelp page, to your website, to your Google listing. And all 3 of those pages need to be seen as exactly what they are, which are sales tools, right? But we're not really selling on those pages. We're selling on social media. And then we're using these pages to just kind of offer blanketed information.
Yeah. Having them just to have them.
Right. And it's always seen as an afterthought when it should be all about experience paired with call to action, right? This isn't an image of my food. This is an image of someone enjoying my food, right? You should come in to celebrate your birthday, your anniversary, that promotion with me. That is exactly how you sell. Look at the best sales pages in the world. What do they all include? Calls to action. Now pick 12 restaurants off the top of your head, go to their websites and see how many calls to action there are. There are almost none. You must compel people. The sale takes place on your Yelp page. The sale takes place on your website. And I would beg you, go to your Yelp page and look at the photos that are presented. People eat with their eyes. And so if like you're rocking photos from like 5 years ago that were taken by an octogenarian with a flip phone in bad light of a half-eaten sandwich, maybe it's time to get professional photography up there. Really show people what you have to offer. And then the last piece of that puzzle is amplifying through press. PR companies are best in the world at building relationships. The way they get you into publications is not because of your merits or their merits. It's because they have a one-to-one relationship with people that are looking to create content for the masses. You can do that too. And I understand that most restaurateurs can't afford a publicist. Great. You don't need one. You also don't need to be in every publication on the planet, which is really where the overwhelm sets in. Look at your competitors. Who are they covered by? Do you want to be in those magazines? Do you want to be on those websites? Do you want to be covered by those bloggers? Reach out directly and say, hey, I saw you just did a release on the 10 best patios. Here are some images of mine and some details on it. The next time you're doing that roundup, I would love to be considered.
Yeah.
Right.
And a lot of times
go ahead.
I'm saying a lot of times my background is in food journalism as well. And a lot of times these contacts are very easy to find. When I was writing for, food magazines, my email was right there on the about page. Email our editors, email our people. And these are, just takes a little bit of digging. And I think it's getting in touch with the people that control those things is a lot easier than you may think.
And Dominick, with a 24-hour news cycle, people are desperate for content. Yeah. So if you frame it in a way that they're able to copy and paste it in, if you do most of the heavy lifting for them, supplying them with the dates, the times, the links, the copy, and the photography, they'll do it just because it's easier to cover you than it is to cover someone else. We're humans dealing with a human enterprise. So the more work you can take off their plate, the better. So like earmark the places where you want to get that press and just start reaching out one-to-one.
Yeah. I think that's great advice. You don't need a big PR firm to do it. And I think you can be just as effective doing it on your own too. Going into this last key here, this one's got me curious. Frequency formula. Tell me about that.
Right. So this is the place that everybody needs help. This is where we are stretched so thin that we don't really have the ability to focus where we could make the most money with the least amount of effort. And it's customer frequency, right? You want to double revenue, get everybody to come back one more time. It's literally that simple. But how do we do it? Let's break it into 3 parts. The first is data collection. And the thing I want to hone in on here is when you think about yourself, right? Your full name, your phone number, and your email address and your birthday, that's valuable information. And so if they're going to give you something of value, you should offer something of value in exchange for that. 5% off, 10% off, 20% off. Shouldn't get that done. Probably won't get that done because that's not something they would be excited to get. You have to give them something they would be excited to get. And I would say, if I turned to you and I said, hey, Dominick, I'll give you 15% off your next meal. Can I please have all of your personal information? You would feel a little suspect about that, right?
Yeah.
But definitely. If I turned to you and said, hey, Dominick, did you enjoy your meal? Yeah. Awesome. Glad to hear it. We do exclusive tastings and we do menu previews every month. I'd love to invite you to it. If you give me your info, I'll plug you into our database and we'll text you and we'll email you letting you know when these things come up so that you can reserve a seat. They're free. Yeah. Would you do that? Right?
Absolutely.
How much does that cost me? Nothing, because I'm going to do the tasting anyway. I want the feedback from the community, so that only benefits me. And then the wine, beer, and liquor tastings that I'm doing, all of that's covered by the distributors themselves. So like it's free, like you're using free to monetize and acquire information. Now, I think there are a lot of restaurateurs out there acquiring information, which brings us to the second point. You have to automate the communication. I can only speak for myself here, but I can tell you, for years, I collected information and did nothing with it, which is tragic. I think we need to set a standard. I think when you collect someone's information, you need to say that you're going to reach out 12 times in a year. I'm going to reach out once a month, either via text or via email. And every time I do, I'm going to offer value and I'm not going to ask for anything. So we can think outside the box. I think the paralysis here comes from not really knowing what to say, right? So just treat them like you would a friend. You can email them, and it doesn't need to be a monthly newsletter of everything that's going on. Hey, this is my grandmother's pie recipe. I thought you would really like it. Hey, here's a link that we're only sending to our mailing list of a cocktail demo for our most popular cocktail, so you can make it at home if you want, because they're not. They come there because they want you to make it, right? Like you can offer tons of value. You can poll people. Hey, the next special we're looking at doing is X, Y, and Z. Which one would you like to see? That's a text message everyone will look forward to getting. And if they vote, they can get one for 10% off, 15% off, or they can get exclusive access because you're only doing 15 of them. There are ways to build value into that communication so that people actually look forward to hearing from you. And then the last piece of that puzzle is leveraging network effect. Let's go back to the 1 to 100 theory and say that everyone in your community should be advocating on your behalf. Every apartment complex, every retail store, every other restaurant in your community should be promoting you. And why? Because a bustling culinary environment within a neighborhood is good for all restaurants involved. Right? You hear about Restaurant Row in this city, and it's busy and it's bustling because there are a bunch of great restaurants doing a bunch of great things. And if they all worked in tandem and didn't see each other as competitors, they would get much further. What does that look like? I'll offer you the best piece of advice I have: list sharing. That instead of turning to another restaurant and saying, hey, give me your mailing list, you turn to 10 restaurants in your area and you say, listen, I know you have a bunch of cool stuff going on this month. I want to talk about it in my newsletter. I want us to collectively create a singular newsletter that goes out every month that tells everyone everything that's going on in the community. And you get retail stores involved, and you get any entertainment venues involved, and you get other restaurants involved. And that way, your list goes from being 400 to 500 people to 14 to 20,000 people overnight. And everyone benefits. And there is a world that exists where we can all benefit, where we're all busy enough.
And I think, that's like, that's kind of the perfect place, I think, to end today too. I think the initial email you sent to me, we were chatting before this, was, about a rising tide, and creating that and helping your neighbors and helping the restaurants down the street from you and helping the ones in your neighborhood and the retail stores and collaborating with them and sharing with them. I think, it just fosters a stronger, retail community, restaurant community. And I think everybody benefits. And, you're just going to see that amplified with the people that are coming in.
Absolutely. And the last thing I would say about it is this isn't high level stuff. Like these are practical, actionable things you can do. And if you don't believe me, go to restaurantcasestudy.com and apply to be part of the case study, and we'll help you do it.
Nice. And where else can people find you?
joshkopel.com. Those are the two easiest places to find me, are going to be either through the case study program or through my own website. Awesome.
And also the podcast on Yelp, was a full comp, and then restaurant marketing school as well. That's every day, right?
Yes, sir.
Awesome. But yeah, give it a listen, check it out, and check out what Josh is doing. He's doing some amazing things, really helping to bolster the restaurant community, and just help everybody do well. So Josh, thank you for coming on today.
The pleasure was all mine.
Thanks again for checking out the Restaurant Growth Podcast. We're glad to have you as a listener. For more great content from 7 Shifts, check out our website and blog, 7shifts.com/blog. You can also hit us on all of the social media platforms at 7 Shifts. Thanks.